Hello Logic Language Learners. Welcome to a much requested video. If I had $1, a pound, a euro for every time somebody has sent me a private message asking for a video on this topic, I would be really wealthy. But it's quite an enormous topic, but that doesn't mean that we can't think about it in the Logic Language Learning logical way. So it's about time that we touch this topic. So this will not be the only video that is going to talk about this, but it will be one of a few, okay? So we are talking about the preposition à, okay? À with the accent. So rule number 1, make sure whenever you are using this word that the accent is there. Otherwise you are saying have, okay? So he has, il a, same pronunciation, no accent. Il a, okay? And this is going top left to bottom right, okay? Top left to bottom right, okay? So we're talking about the preposition à. So the first thing to work on with à is to really work out which of the situations that we are using is bringing the use of à up. And there are several, okay? So we're going to try and find some patterns, and then we're just going to isolate the random and the irregular into a group that you kind of understand. So let's start. So obvious first things first, we will use à when we mean to. So we're going somewhere. So je vais à Paris, I'm going to Paris. Je vais à Berlin, I'm going to Berlin. Next thing, we will use à for when we are in a city, and this is different from English. So in English, I am going to Paris, I am in Paris. In French, we will have I am going à Paris, je suis à Paris. Okay, so that is the next thing to remember. We don't have en Paris or dans Paris or anything like this, okay? In this context. The next thing, if we are using à and the words the, can I remind you? So à and le will form to make o. À and la will stay the same, that's absolutely fine. So à la, and à and les will make o with an X. So I am going to the United States, je vais aux États-Unis, AUX, and I would hear the z because of état starting with an E. If I was going to the cinema, which is masculine, je vais au cinéma, because it's masculine. If I was going to the pharmacy, je vais à la pharmacie, okay? So I'm going somewhere feminine. So à can be joined into the word the when it comes next to it. Can I remind you that we still do that when we use à with the, even though we're not going to? So for example, it might be talking to. So for example, I speak to the boy, je parle au garçon. I speak to the children, je parle aux enfants. I speak to the women, je parle aux femmes. So as long as we have an à and then the word, okay, we're still going to have that that join. Where we wouldn't have the join, and this is the same with de, little side note, is where your le, la or les represents a person. So to continue to do it, continuer à le faire. We don't have à le making an o, or à les faire. So when your le, la, les represents a person, directly, you don't make the join. And if you don't understand what that is, then can you please look at the videos on direct pronouns, okay, which are one of the first 20 videos I've done. Next up with à. You are going to use à, like we've talked about, with indirect concept verbs. So the trick to mastering these in French is that everybody has a preference. Some people are really good at remembering to use them to make things indirect when you're using a pronoun. So je lui parle, not je le parle, je leur donne. And some people are better at remembering to make them indirect afterwards. But here's the basic rule. If you need to make it indirect, and by indirect I mean that it's going to be to the person, to him, to them, or another expression which means that they are not the most directly handled by the verb. So anywhere that you would use lui and leur, you are going to have to use à afterwards. So for example, many of you are now great saying je leur donne mon argent, I give them my money. But if it's I give my money to my parents, like in English, je vais donner mon argent à mes parents. You must remember to use the à on the other side. That's easy because in English we have that too. But there are expressions in French where we would have the à there, okay? And we need to be very, very mindful that we don't have it in English. So another idea I'd like to talk about is if you have the preposition à, what are you going to do with the rest of your sentence? Okay? So we will come back to that one in a minute when you need to reverse it. So I want you to pay attention to some of these verbs because we're going to be reversing them in a minute. So first things first, let's have a little look at verbs which take à commonly, okay, and verbs which take à plus quelqu'un, then plus the de, because this is the big divide. When you're using à and then having another verb, or whether you're using à plus a person and after that person you then have de, and that is a really common divide between verbs, okay? So let's have a little look. So for example, when you use à plus another verb, for example, je vais commencer à parler, I'm going to start speaking, okay? When would we use à then a person? So we've not gone à into a verb, we're going to use à then a person. So I'm going to, I told him to speak, j'ai dit à Luc de parler. Je lui ai dit de parler. Okay, so let's just have a look at how this works. Now, all of these verbs, I'm going to give you an example for most of them, but what you must really get good at, and I've had lots of emails from all of you. I had a great email from Adrian this week, who had looked things up in the dictionary but hadn't quite understood. So what you've got to be really clever with, I mentioned this in the de video, is when you've got the short form, the QQN and the QCH, the quelqu'un and the quelque chose. So for example, I was talking about the verb to allow, so it's permit to someone de faire quelque chose, permit à quelqu'un de faire quelque chose. Now, if you were to look that up in word reference, okay, let's look it up. Let's see what it says in word reference, which I always think is the best website to for this kind of thing. Wordreference.com. I shall pop the link underneath. If I type in allow, because this is what you've got to get used to, allow. Now you can start looking for little code words like transitive and all this business and active and all these little, so for example here we've got VT, so verb transitive. So there's all these little codes. But if you look up, and I shall pop the link underneath again, if you were to look up allow, so on the left you have allow SB, somebody, to do STH, something. What does it say in French? Permettre à quelqu'un, QQN, de faire QCH, quelque chose. So that is the way around that you need to learn these things. Yeah, you need to be really careful for this little system, and that will tell you whether or not you need an à. So I really suggest you get used to doing that. So that would then mean I'm going to allow Daniel to speak in English. Je vais permettre à Daniel de parler en anglais. And any time I've got one of these à, if Daniel became a him, I'm going to allow him to speak in English, I would need to preserve that à. I would need to make it a to him. So je vais lui permettre de parler en anglais. Okay? So it's all about remembering, if something's indirect, it's going to have an à plus the name of the person, or if the person has come in the sentence, it's going to have a lui. Yeah? You've done this with easier verbs. Je lui parle. Je parle à lui, or je parle, but that's not great. Je parle à Luc, okay? Great. So now let's have a look at the verbs that I want you to get used to using. So these are going to be verbs so the following verbs require à after the preposition, and then you'll go into another verb. So these are just some examples, okay? So aider, to help. He helped me to speak. Il m'a aidé à parler, okay? Il m'aide à parler. Now when you've got these, if you want to off the bat, get really good at this. Practice a few sentences of your own. Practice if you've got an a, you're then going to have you're then going to have what am I trying to say? You're then going to have to get used to reversing them round. But the problem here that we need to be careful with is you're getting used to using a that would go into a person, which would make them indirect, or you're getting used to using a going into a verb. So you need to make sure you know which is which. So the following verbs are followed by the preposition a, so aider à. Okay, so il m'aide à parler. He helps me to speak. Okay. I learned to speak. J'ai appris à parler. Yeah? It's not the to speak that's going to give me the a, because to speak on its own is just parler. Okay, so il m'a appris à parler. J'ai appris à parler. Il m'a enseigné would be better, but il m'a appris. So j'ai appris à parler. I learned to do it. J'ai appris à le faire. Okay. And it's this idea for those of you that are like, Luke, is it going to be a or is it going to be de? Kind of going towards something is in the a. So I learned to do this thing. I took myself, you know, more towards this thing. I started to learn. J'ai commencé à apprendre. Okay? So I started to learn to speak. J'ai commencé à apprendre à parler. To continue to speak, je continue à parler. He encourages me to speak. Il m'encourage à parler. To teach someone to dance. Yeah, he teaches me to dance. Il m'enseigne à danser. To get used to doing something. Je vais m'habituer à, to get used to. Now, many of you will be familiar with I am used to. Je suis habitué à. Okay? To get down to doing something, put yourself to doing something. Je vais me mettre à le faire. Okay? Je vais me mettre à le faire. To be useful to doing something. So that serves to doing something is what we say. Ça sert à le faire. Okay? Great, so I will pop that complete list up. Here's something at this stage for you to think of. Okay? Anytime in French that you have one of these, anytime in French that you have one of these concepts with an a and then another verb, or even an a and then a person, you can use the preposition I, which is the letter Y, and I really have to stress that. So, for example, I will probably do another video on the I, but this is really useful if we're having a big attack of the letter A, because this is what this is. This is a big attack on the preposition A. So if I said, for example, I'm going to Paris, je vais à Paris, I'm going there, j'y vais, J apostrophe Y, yeah, the Y will cancel out the I of the je. So j'y vais, tu y vas, il y va, nous y allons, vous y allez, ils y vont. Okay? I went there, j'y suis allé. So that I is going in place as a pronoun. Where do pronouns go before the main verb? Pronouns are being used because we've had a to. So we could say je vais là, but we're saying j'y vais. Now many of you are comfortable with that. Many of you. But I need to bring you up a level and to make another idea quite clear to you. There are times, so you are used to using a becoming I when we're talking about transport, okay? But the fact is, we've just identified there are plenty of times in French where you will use a going towards an idea, not towards transport. I'm interested in doing something, je m'intéresse au sport. Yes, you can say le sport m'intéresse, je suis intéressé par, le sport est intéressant, all of this stuff. But je m'intéresse à is the expression. So, if we were to get rid of the a and what comes next, it would become an I. This is not dissimilar for you guys who have gotten used to taking de and what comes next and making it an en. So, for example, I need the pens, j'ai besoin des stylos, de les stylos, des stylos. I need them, j'en ai besoin. You can't say les, you've got this en. So the same with the letter a. Je